I understand you have been active the whole day, and but it would be great if you could just manage 20 minutes of your energy to focus on this, okay? All right. How many of you here understand English? Do we have a translator? A little bit? Can you translate for your friends?
Yes.
Okay. I will try to speak slower, okay? But of course, if something interests you, I can also tell you afterwards, okay? So that I can finish in 20 minutes. Okay, thank you. All right, my name is Bojana Jelicic. I'm a psychologist, so that's actually my basic formal knowledge. And I have been working within sport for the last 17 years, since 2005. I actually started in football, and I have been in 10 sports so far, but the longest was in handball. And it started with the European Championship in 2012 with the Serbian men's team. And then at the end of that year, starting with the Serbian women's team, and it continued. So I have been actually in women's handball. And sometimes collaborating more individually with men, and even with some coaches from the Men's Champions League last year. So more experience concerning handball comes from the women's handball, but of course, I mean, at the top level, there are the differences is not that big. What I have spoken with Dragan about, what would be best to speak about today, is maybe to get you familiar with a project that I have been a part of for the EHF. It's a project called Respect Your Talent, and it is something, do you know about it?
I was part of it.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Bravo, nice. When?
I won MVP when we had the European Championship under 19,
okay.
3 years ago.
So you were actually in the first group, right?
I was supposed to, but then COVID. So
okay, you didn't go at the end.
I didn't.
Okay.
Yeah,
Are they planning to call you guys or what? Okay, that's something I could ask. Okay. I was active in December with the girls group and in January with the boys group. The idea of the project is something that actually would be great if every player had a chance to get actually like a certain guide from these areas that we're also going to add the nutritionists here and some other domains as well. But these are the main areas that we are actually informing the players about. To actually have a chance to, or give yourself a chance to use your potential or develop it actually right into a capacity of yours and have as best of a career as you can, it is important that you are informed along the way on these 5 topics that we have defined as main topics. We have my area, right, of psychology. We actually at the end called it mental fitness. It's the term that we use now, because at first they thought that mental health was a very serious topic for a younger player. Then we spoke about mental performance, and then at the end we agreed it's going to be mental fitness. It sounds maybe a bit more, let's say, closer to them as a topic. Then we discussed, we had actually a lawyer that mostly works with athletes. He helps them out from his aspect on contracts. So we will have ideas or actually guides from that aspect as well given today. Anti-doping, we had a director of anti-doping agency of Austria, an older man, Hans Holthaus, very cool old man. I think he's maybe even 70 already. Great person with great personality, of course, not just knowledge. That was actually out of this topic that maybe is not that much fun. He made everybody laugh. So it was really fun to listen to him in December and January as well. Then we had, the players had some practice from media, like giving interviews, what to say if you win a game, what to say if you lose a game, in what different situations, what would be best to say, how to, for example, if you are in a press conference and you're asked a certain question that you don't want to answer, how to actually go around it and answer something but skip the answer that the journalist wanted and so on. Social media, of course. Why was it important? Because there's a lot of misuse of that. So especially younger players being not that much mature, right? And not thinking about the information that you're giving out about yourself, or the photos that you're posting maybe is not the best choice to do, because once it's there, you actually cannot control it, how people use it, right? And the dual career topic, which actually, it should stimulate you to understand that it would be really good if you also studied along your career. So find something that you want to do maybe afterwards when you finish your career. Start thinking about what you're going to do after your handball career. Because handball is not, I mean, looking at the aspect of finances in handball, okay, there's a big difference, first of all, between men's contract and women's contract. Huge difference. I remember this was information maybe 3 or 4 years ago, because I didn't know what the difference is. So around 350 to 400,000 per year were some of the best female contracts, women contracts, where some of the best men's were between 1.9 and 3.3. So it's a huge difference, right? There's a lot of more sponsorship here, and let's say financial compensation is much different. So this is also more sensitive. But then on the other side, being a woman, let's say in the men's world, because I mean, let's be serious, right? It is how it is. We still need to work a lot on some moments. We really need to be careful about what we post, right? Especially which photos. I understand that, you know, being young, being an athlete, being fit, you also want at a certain age to show your body to the others. I mean, look at me, I look good, right? But I mean, especially in our case, we really need to be careful what we expose to the world out there, and so on. So I'm going to start. This is just an overall information. Let me start now by asking you, how many of you are familiar with what a psychologist does? Are you familiar with it?
What kind of psychologist? Like sports psychologist?
Are you familiar with what psychology does in general? Okay. So, can you tell us? Or do you want me to? I can do it. It's okay? Okay. So, what a psychologist does in general, we actually study how people think to understand how they feel, because thoughts plus emotions equal behavior, so that we would understand why people act a certain way. So it's all connected, okay? That's like the basic stuff. In sports psychology, there's a bit more to that, right? We are actually professionals that, from the psychological domain, try to develop the player, not just use all their potentials or develop in all those means, but also to bring the maximum out of the player. Have you ever had any experiences with a sports psychologist? You have? Bravo. Yes? Where? Club? National team?
Sort of private through my personal trainer.
Bravo. Good. How were your experiences? Are you satisfied, or?
Yeah, but I think it should go better.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Just so you know, good thing that you pointed this out. When choosing a sports psychologist, it is really important to understand that, to keep in mind that you need to also find somebody, of course, a licensed psychologist, of course, right? But you need to find somebody that you would choose as a person to work with you, because our profession is different. I like to say, to use a trivial example, I'm not a hairdresser, so in my case, it's not like I don't care who sits on the chair and whose hair am I going to cut or whatever. To me, it's very important who I'm going to work with. So do we connect? If we connect, okay. If we don't connect, then I think it would be better if you choose somebody else, right? So we have that, let's say, personal note in a way of the importance of choosing the person that you like. You like that person, how they are, how their energy is, how you think you could, let's say, have a mutual goal and build something, right? So that's very important. That aspect, but first of all, speaking, it's important to accent the licensed coach. There's also, psychologist. There's a lot of mental coaches that are actually not psychologists. So keep that also in mind. If you were to ask me, of course, I'm not for that. Okay, in my case, I can only support psychology and psychiatry, right? As formal domains, formal educations, where in this case we have people that are not formally educated as psychologists, so they can do some things, but not everything. That is something that you need to know. There are some areas that they can, of course, work on, but again, keep in mind, it's not a psychologist. So, I mean, would you go, if you needed a surgery, would you go to a baker? No, you would go to somebody that has a medical college, right, or a university, and that is a doctor or a surgeon. So just have that in mind when you choose as well. Do you have an idea what we can help you with? Or if you were to call us, what would you ask for?
Mental preparation for games.
Good, yes.
For example.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What else?
Mental strength in
Okay.
the trainings and during the career.
Right, yes.
To deal with crazy coach.
Right, yes, because it's not always easy. I mean, although it's funny, it's not always easy to work with somebody when you come into the club, but like I like to say to my players, for example, if you were my team now, I could tell you this. I did not come here to be loved. I came here to work, right? So we need to respect each other, and we need to find a way to work together, because we don't have a choice. You have a contract, I have a contract, and we have a mutual team. So that actually asks from every one of us to be mature and professional and to find a way. I also like to joke, and I told you this today, I also tell them, you know what, if I had to choose somebody to have coffee with, maybe I would never choose, I would not choose ever anybody from this group. But we're not here about that, right? We're here about working, and we have to find a way to work together. So yes, and it is now going back to your what you mentioned. I like the actually Gestalt idea, the whole idea that you looked at from above, right? Zoom out, because it is about your whole career. So it's not just, of course, the little segments are very important as well, but to have an idea of the importance of working on yourself continuously. It's like working with a strength and conditioning coach. You need one, of course, right, on a daily basis in the club, right? I mean, if you are at a certain, at some of the top levels or elite level, it is something that, I mean, even in those teams, this is also something that you should be getting or get in certain sports like football on a daily level, right? But we need to keep in mind that it's a so-called longitudinal investment. So it would be best if you have that idea clear, that you need to invest in yourself continuously. Not just, for example, I have an issue with a coach and I get that solved, and that's that, I don't need the help anymore. Because I usually also tell the clients, you know, most of the clients call when there's a problem. But you need to call when there is no problem, so that we can work on everything that needs to be done even before the problem is created. Because when we have a problem, you probably already are frustrated. Then we have an issue, right? Because you're energetically drained. So everything is more complicated. Of course, it's solvable, but I'm just saying, call, contact on time. All right. Sorry? Yeah, sometimes it is late. Depends on what is the problem. But just so you know, anything and everything that you can work on with a colleague of mine, so with the psychologist, in every collaboration, that of course we have an athlete on one side and a licensed professional on the other side, so somebody that knows their job. you will always have progress. It just depends how big the progress will be, and in which areas. But I like to tell people it's never going to stay the same. You're always going to have the progress, and you're always going to get some solutions. Let me now go to the sport law, which was a topic interesting for me when I was there during the project. I was also taking notes. The lawyer was speaking about professional and semi-professional contracts, and actually asking also the young players who has a contract, if they already had experience with a lawyer, what were some of the clauses that they would suggested to put in the contract, and so on. He was telling them about the need to understand the labor law, of course to a certain level, not completely, but that's why you find a lawyer, right? So that you don't have to study law. Then he was mentioning to them the importance of understanding that if you don't get the insurance from the club, that it is something that you need to actually arrange for yourself with private insurance. The kids asked about, kids, yeah, they were 19 at the most, they were young. Yeah. They asked about agents. What about agents? Well, there was a lot of questions about agents. I think out of the around 25-30 people were present in the girls group and the boys group. Only maybe 2 or 3 had contracts and had an agent, so at their age they just started developing. I mean, they just stepped in it. Then the kids had questions of who pays the fee, and then the lawyer explained that if you're like in their case right now, they should be expecting that there are going to be those that are going to cover the fee, but once they develop and once they become an interest of clubs, clubs are going to be those that are going to cover that. Then just a second. Yes, then he told them also that they have the right to ask very clearly the agent how much does their how much is their commission, how much do they cost actually, and what do they have to pay. So actually they were, from my aspect, looking at that conversation, they were actually given the, let's say, the freedom or maybe he helped them understand that they have the right to protect themselves, to ask questions, which is, yeah, but you wouldn't believe how scared the kids are. You know, at that age, and we cannot, you cannot assume that everybody has parents that know how
but
to.
It's like you go to a bakery and you take something, you ask how much it costs.
Yeah. Thank God for you that was logical for you, but it's not for many. There's a lot of insecurity, especially with the younger players, as I said. There's a lot of insecurity, and you know there are some questions that might be maybe stupid for you. Now, how old are you right now?
25.
You're
25.
25. Some of them would be weird for you, or stupid, or dumb. I mean, who asks that? But I mean, you know, everybody has some background of lack of some knowledge, and it's better that they ask than if they don't. Then the man also talked about match fixing and sport manipulation. Some of the boys told us about, for example, some messages that they got in their inboxes on the social media, on Instagram, where they were asked or offered some let's say, collaborations that are actually not something that they should accept. So that was also interesting to hear. That, I mean, those people also send that to the kids. You're sending it to players that are 17, 18, 19. Okay, I wasn't even thinking that somebody would send that kind of information to kids. Actually, I was imagining that it happens actually at a different age. Okay. What questions would you have? Does something come to your mind right now concerning this?
You have to know the taxes and they can pay those.
He also mentioned that, yes. He gave us some examples. I mean, I remember one player that was playing in France that was thinking for the first 3 years that the club was paying her taxes. Then she realized that the club didn't pay the taxes. I don't know if she paid yet, but at the moment of telling me this, sorry?
Almost to zero.
Sorry.
She's still on the zero, almost in the end.
So yeah, that's also a topic that was mentioned over there. But what I could say in general, I could say that when kids were listening to the lawyer and asking questions, you could actually, or maybe just by watching them the way they're sitting, and there's a lot of there's a lot of insecurity on this topic within the population of younger players. So it just gives us actually a feedback of an importance of speaking about this and informing the kids. Or maybe actually doing it through the national federations. Yeah, push them actually to inform their players. All right. Then about anti-doping. How much would you say you're informed about that?
Somehow in national teams,
Okay.
the physiotherapist before something.
And you are from where?
Israel.
Israel. Okay.
So we like us, tell us every some supplements or something you take, so we can check with the IHF.
Good. He was telling them about how actually it is important that each player is informed, that you are the person that is responsible, because how many times have you heard the player actually being positive just because they trusted the physio or they trusted the doctor, actually being completely passive towards these kind of information, or the so-called prohibited list of substances and methods. He also gave them a site, WADA, the World Association of Anti-Doping Association, actually, or agency, sorry, where he told them or suggested that they should actually go and search and look through it and maybe organize something within the club, because we have kids from different kind of countries and levels of development. Also, I don't know if you heard about the Cologne list. Have you heard about that? Cologne, like Cologne, the city in Germany. Cologne list is actually a site or an institute. They have a site, it's Cologne, I'm going to write it later, where you can, it's an institute that actually checks the supplements for any suspicious or prohibited substances. So you can go to that site and type in the name of the supplement and see if it has been run through or checked, which is also something that it's something that I heard for the first time over there. Let me write it down.
You should know that.
Definitely. CologneList.com. Then he also accented that actually the player should know the protocol, or actually you must know the protocol, because he said at the end of every doping control you will be asked, was the protocol followed? Was everything okay? And I mean, how are you going to answer yes or no if you don't know if it was? So it's something that actually reminds you of how much you are responsible, right? And he accented at the end, so I underlined it on my notes and I wrote it here for you as well, that you need to know that you're always responsible for what is in your body. So because I have personally had experiences through my teams and situations that some of the players went through, or usually from the national teams, so they had issues in clubs. I remember one player in my last national team, she played in Romania, and she actually didn't go to the World Championship with us in Japan. Remember which one? Little one, the wing?
Left wing.
The Imona. She was in Brasov. They had a situation where they were taken to a certain, let's say, clinic, where they actually were not being given any substance that is that is on the prohibited list, but they were, the method that was used was prohibited. They actually were getting IV, which is not allowed, right? And some of the players, like her being one, she was out. No, she was not. So she came back to her home country, and then Corona started and everything. But she was not allowed to even train on the court until like 1 year later. I was still there. And then she started training with her, actually it was her home team. She played once for that team. Asked the coach and he said okay, but after she could, of course. Until then she could not even, before getting back to the handball court, she could not even at some point train in the fitness center. So she, I mean, it was just, it's incredible what the girl went through just because she did not know that something was not allowed, and she trusted the doctors and the medical team of the club.
With some basic medicine you take, disease or something like that.
That was an example I was telling the physios today during the training session.
Good example for us.
Right.
For example.
Olivera Jelicic, one our marathon runner. She actually, I don't know how many, 15 years ago, she was banned from a New York marathon because of that, the asthma medication she was taking. Another information that was very interesting, I don't know if even you know this, that we learned from Hans Holthaus, is to, for example, aspirin. That's right, it's a brand name of a certain medicine that has its generic, let's say, definition. So like the chemical definition, right? So chemical definition is what is important to check to see if it's if the medicine is allowed or not allowed. But this example was not given from aspirin. He said which medicine it was. But let's just use the word, just the name of a certain medicine, and so let's say the person, I remember that he bought, let's say, an aspirin in Switzerland because it is something that he uses in Austria, where he's from. But the aspirin, so the medicine with that brand name, although the same, does not have the same chemical substances within it. So actually the player was also prohibited, or actually was tested positive on the doping control. And he was confused why. And then when he went back, he said, okay, but it was only an aspirin. Yeah, but where did you buy that aspirin? Well, okay, I bought it in Switzerland. Okay, let's check. And then when they checked in Switzerland, there was a substance that was not allowed. It was prohibited. I mean, that was something I heard for the first time as well. Who would think that, right? You think one name of a certain medicine used everywhere in the world, but now I learned in December last year that that does not mean that the content is the same. So have that in mind. So if you are clear that you can use certain medicine, then buy it in your country and take it with you somewhere so that you have extra, just to be sure. All right. Let me just go a bit back, just ask you one question from my area. How well would you say that you know yourself?
Maybe 30%.
30%? Okay. He said he would say that he knows himself well. Okay. What would you say?
Don't be shy.
You think there's still room? Ima li mesta još? Da se spoznaš? No. Yeah. All right. So there's always room, just so you know. No matter the age, there's always room to learn something new about yourself. Just me. So he has his association. And just to help you out, I'm going to tell you now about a test that has only 2 questions. It's called ego perception test, and it's something that one of many tests that psychology has that we use to just like make a starting point. I use it especially when I start working with a player or with a team. Just so you could get an idea of how much do you really know yourself, or realize how much you actually maybe don't have that much information about you, or are not clear about how you would explain yourself. We're not going to do it on the paper now, so just do it in your heads for yourself. And the first question is, who am I? So ask yourself, who are you? What would you write? just the associations that.
This last.
Odlično, ne zato što prosto tako znate kako poznaje.
Da je rekao Bojana Jelicic.
Da?
Pamtiš?
Da?
Onaj prošli put je rekao Bojana Jelicic.
Joj, da. We had one player last year that he reminded me now. When I said, who am I? The player said, Bojana Jelicic. So, when you actually sit down and write this, usually you realize, even with the first question, that okay, some people write a few answers, some write the whole page, but there's always, of course, more room to realize that maybe even sometimes when you hear that question for the first time, you realize that you never thought about it before. How would you define yourself, right? Anyway, after that, we go to the second one, and it's the second one that says, who would I like to become? And I had an opportunity actually to, it was a coincidence, Kristina Likšević. I once tested in 2005 when I was in Vestar, the football club. I was invited by, what was the name of the coach in the women's handball club? Žerajić called me and asked me if I could test the girls. And Kiki and I realized 7 years later that she was in that team then. I mean, I didn't know, of course. I mean, those names didn't mean anything to me in 2005. We laughed. I found the answers. It was so fun to read. I mean, even to her, to see what she wrote 7 years ago. And it is interesting, especially the part, who would I like to become? She did her task. So it was satisfying for her to read. But who am I and who would I like to become? Something to start thinking about. To see where you are or where you want to go. And how much more do you need to work on which areas on yourself, with who, to reach certain points that would satisfy you. Also, something here is that we spoke about through this project is coping with injury, and Leki did that. We had players that are active, are our so-called ambassadors on the project. So they do topics together with us because, of course, standing in front of the kids don't know me. Nobody knows from that, or from athletes, how many athletes know us, right? But players that are active at a certain level, of course, they're going to recognize and know. So it's going to be completely different. The transfer of the whole maybe even impression of the whole project and or the lecture. It's completely different when they hear some information from a player that maybe even they're a fan. So we spoke about coping with injury. Actually, I went through some theoretical aspect that I'm not going to mention today, but just giving you an idea. And she spoke about how she coped with some injuries. We had, out of those 27 girls, we had only one that had an injury, ACL, and that had an operation, surgery done. Of course, the others, thankfully, did not have that experience yet. But Leki shared how some of the experience that she went through, what she learned from those injuries, so from the periods of recovery. And actually, I think she mentioned that the last one, the Achilles tendon, was the most difficult one for her, and how she found room at being 30-something to still grow, although being a top player of how many years already at that point. So coping with injury, interesting as well, especially, let's say, recovery and reminding or teaching the players that recovery does not only have the physical aspect of recovery, but also the mental aspect. So it's important to also collaborate with a professional on that aspect as well. And what she also, so I wrote it here, where she shared from her experience and actually the advice for the players was to always have in mind that you need to give yourself time in that period, that you need to be patient so that you would actually have at the end, when the whole process is finished, be satisfied actually. Okay, and as I said, media, they practiced, there was a woman that works as a journalist on TV, and she actually helped them with some tips on how to, what information to give during an interview, what not to give during an interview. As I said at the beginning, how to go around some answers or some questions that you don't want to give answers to, and not feel bad about not giving an answer, because you have the right. You have the right to say anything that you want, let's say anything. But if you're being provoked by a journalist, you don't, as she was suggested as well, another thing to mention at that point, it's actually very important who the coach chooses to go to the press conference. Because after a game, especially if you're disappointed, it's really, right. But the coach needs to choose somebody who is going to be able to control himself or herself and to actually remain professional during the press conference, because anything is possible when you sit in front of the journalist, right? Anything could happen. So they get that advice, and they also practiced. There were 2 cameramen present from the German television, and they practiced actually Austrian, sorry. They practiced with them giving interviews, imagining that they, let's say, had a Champions League game, or maybe it was a final and they lost or they won, and how would they give an interview in that situation. It was fun to watch. As I said, social media, I told you already what they were given advices on that. And for the end, dual career. At that point, during this project, I said we are actually speaking with youngsters that are still at the high school level. Some of them are already at the university level, or some of them completed high school and did not enroll into university. But here it will be a bit different, you're a bit older. But as I said, it's just something to maybe Google about. Just so you know, it's a term that is used, dual career, that suggests concerning sports, to start thinking about what you're going to do after you finish your handball career, because sometimes it might end before you planned, right? Some things might happen and the career might end at an earlier age. What are you going to do with your life afterwards? So it's actually something that, of course, my profession supports a lot. Because we also need to be aware that in our sport, like I was mentioning you, the contract or the amount of money that actually happens at the top, but it doesn't happen in all the other levels, right? So it's not like you are active in a sport where you're going to be like in football, in a position to earn a lot of money, right? So it's not, it's possible of course, but it's not something that happens that often like it happens in football. In their case, dual career is presented a bit differently. But in our case of our sport, just keep in mind that it's important to help you out, and don't worry. Some of the experiences that we heard from players that are elite players and have been studying enrolled in a certain university or completed the studies during their elite career, that they actually found it easier because it was something that they could shift their mind to and relax from handball. Because most of the kids at the beginning, or youngsters, they ask, okay, how am I going to manage this? I will not have time for this. And so it was interesting how the ambassadors, right, they jumped in, telling them what they studied, when they studied, and so on. And by the way, there's also a woman that works in EHF. She's at the head of the women's board now. I forgot her name at this moment. She's originally from Africa, but she's from France. Anyway, she was a top player. At the moment when actually, why did she sign Metz? At one point she was telling me because Metz was the only club that was playing Champions League and that wanted to support her wish to study psychology parallel. Other clubs didn't want to support her. They said, no, you cannot study anything, you will just be a player. And by the way, she was also the player in the national senior team in France, or national team in France. And then she tells me this, sports psychology was in Metz University, was 5 years. And then she tells me, which I didn't know, but she goes, then I studied a bit longer than I should have, and I expected 10 years or something. I said, yes, well, how long was it? She said, 7 years. So it was just 2 years more, which is nothing. I mean, with the schedule that she had, bravo, for 2 years, right? It's just two additional years. So anyway, just something to think about if you haven't heard about it. Maybe Google a bit and maybe you will get some ideas as well. And this, please check out VADA, please. And check out the columnist. And if you have any questions while I'm here, I think I'm going to be here until Friday before noon or Friday morning. You can feel free to ask me anything to explain.
Especially this last.
We're going to call him the nerd, right? So feel free to ask me anything to help you out with, to explain something, maybe some questions that you might have. So enjoy the camp and